Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about how to choose electives and CFE depth topics. If you like what you see, please give this video a thumbs up and also consider to subscribe. I try to post videos weekly. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the description below. I'll talk about this a little bit later in my video, but for anyone that just wants to get what electives they should be taking, I can tell you right now, there's about a 70% chance that you're going to take assurance as one of your elective, and then your second highest choice is probably going to be performance management, if your company doesn't require you to take tax. So for anyone that's still stuck around for the video, this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to talk about what electives are there, the top questions you should be asking yourself when deciding on your electives. We're going to do some myth busting on electives, and then what to expect in each of the electives. Hopefully after going through all of those topics, you'll figure out which elective is best for you. For anyone that doesn't know, there's 4 different electives you can choose from, similar to the Houses of Hogwarts, but just not as exciting. There's assurance, there's tax, there's finance, and then there's performance management. Each one of them comes with their pros and cons, but we'll look at all of them before the end of this video. So now let's revisit the chart that I showed you in the beginning of this video. This is what people have selected as their day 2 depth role since September 2016 to 2021. So what happens when candidates get to the CFE? They normally choose one of their 2 electives as their depth roles. As you can see, most people chose assurance as their depth competency. That probably also indicates how many of them chose assurance as one of their electives. If you take a step back, you might ask yourself, why did so many candidates choose assurance as their depth role? And one of the reasons is because most of these candidates came from accounting firms, and the firms require students to take assurance as their depth role. Something else to take away from this chart is that if you see the very right, I put in the May 2021 CFE and the September 2021 CFE. You could see how many people write in the May sitting versus the September sitting. I don't know if that influences your decision on when you want to write, but that just gives you an indication of the volume of candidates at those times. In addition, if you look at the May sitting, you'll notice that the candidates who picked assurance and performance management are fairly even. And that's because at the May sitting, most of the accounting students that are in accounting firms are probably working their busy season, and so they're not going to be doing the exam during that time. So there's less candidates required to do assurance as their depth role. So now that you know what are the 4 electives you can select from, you want to ask yourself these top questions. The first one being, does my employer need me to take any particular elective or depth area? If they do, then your choice is fairly simple. You'll just do what they tell you. If they don't, ask yourself the second question. Do I want to find the easiest path to get my CPA? Because in the end, a CPA is a CPA. It doesn't matter which elective you took. You're just going to end up with the 3 letters, and people will recognize you that you have a certain level of competency because of it. So take the electives that you find the easiest. If you ask around, some people might say the easiest 2 would be assurance and performance management. The reason for that is because the answers always depend, and it really depends on how you explain yourself to get your full marks. Versus if you're going to do tax, the answer is either right or wrong. The third question would be, do I want to learn something for my future career? If you want to learn something to prepare you for your future career, that could also be a reason why you take an elective that you might not be the best in, but you just want to do it because you want to learn something from it. The fourth question is, what has my past marks been in these areas? You want to try to take something that you normally can get a high mark in so that you can actually pass. I wouldn't recommend you to take an elective that you've consistently just barely passed. The last question would be, what are others selecting? The only reason for this one is because misery loves company, and sometimes it's good just to have friends that are studying the same thing as you, so at least you have some friends to talk to, bounce ideas off of, and study with. So now let's do some myth busting related to CPA Canada electives. These are silly things CPA candidates think. So one myth is that assurance is the easiest elective. That's not always true. It actually depends on what you're good at. Some people say assurance is actually the hardest because it's so abstract. Right? You have to make your procedures and there's no real roadmap of how to make them. So it really depends on the person. Then there's also questions that they can ask you on the audit guide, which is another textbook that you have to read. So it really depends on who you are. If you like the more qualitative sense and a little bit more wiggle room to explain your answers, then maybe assurance is the easiest for you. But if you're like, I don't like to do audit planning memos, I don't like to, make procedures, then this isn't going to be an easy subject. The next myth is that my future employer cares a lot about my elective and depth area. The truth is, your future employer really cares about where you have worked in the past and what job experience you have, and then also have you obtained your CPA or not. it's very unlikely that they'll really grill you on which elective did you take and which depth area you really specialized in. Because everyone knows that you could always take another book and read about the areas that you didn't specialize in. And once you have your CPA, they expect that you have a certain level of competency over all elective areas. Another myth is that everyone needs to take assurance and tax. The truth is, if your employer doesn't require you to, you can take any elective you want. And to be honest, tax is one of the harder electives because they really grill you on your tax knowledge, and tax is a subject where you either know it or you don't. If you try guessing, it's probably not going to be right because the Tax Act does not make sense. The reason why you think everyone's taking assurance and tax is because most of those accountants are working in accounting firms where their employers require them to actually take assurance and tax. Another myth is that everyone needs a public accounting license and it's going to help you in your career. And to be able to get this public accounting license, you need to take assurance and tax electives, and then on the day 2 depth role, you have to also specialize in assurance. The truth is, most accountants don't have a public accounting license even if they took the tax and assurance elective. The reason for this is because you have to actually apply to get your license afterwards, and most accountants don't need it until you actually get to the partner level at an accounting firm. If you just want to be a CFO or you just want to be a controller, you're not going to need this public accounting license. However, if later in your career you're fortunate enough to be asked to become a partner at an accounting firm and you don't have your assurance and tax electives completed, you could always do a bridge exam, which is an additional exam that allows you to just get your public accounting license. So it's not the end of the world if you haven't gotten it and you're asked to become a partner. Many people say that assurance is the easiest elective, but many people who say this are also auditors within accounting firms. So you might want to take that with a grain of salt. One of the reasons why people say that assurance is the easiest is because the questions are sometimes predictable. It's normally safe to assume that you'll need to do a planning memo with procedures, so that's something you can study for in advance. In addition, there's no one right answer, so people can still say different things and still get the mark. I've listed some of the topics commonly found in this elective, so if you find these topics interesting or easy, then maybe you should consider choosing assurance. There's many people who take tax as an elective because accounting firms make their employees take it, but not many of them end up taking tax as their depth role. In my opinion, tax is one of the harder topics because it's very technical and you either know it or you don't. The Tax Act is very specific and it grows every year, and there's not too much judgment for you to explain yourself. I'd only recommend tax for people to take it as their depth competency or their elective if they plan to use this for work or they've gotten good grades in it in the past. For those who just want to get their CPA with as little stress as possible, I might advise you to avoid tax. To be honest, tax is probably one of the worst subjects of all CPA candidates, which is why it's marked actually fairly easy on a day 3. It's almost as if you just attempt the issue and you'll get an RC. Whereas other assessment opportunities, you really need to work for it. And if you still don't believe me that CPAs aren't good in tax, just ask anyone who just finished their CFE to walk you through a personal and corporate tax example and then just watch them struggle. The topics you will need to know for this elective or depth area would revolve around personal and corporate taxes. If you're not required by your employers to take assurance and tax, most people take performance management. Why? It might be because there's a governance component that people find easy. At times, there can be more than one right answer, which makes it easier to get your marks. Also, people coming out of Capstone 1 would have a lot of practice with governance and linking accounting topics with the company's mission and vision. However, performance management also has managerial accounting included in it as well, so be prepared to do some cost and profit analysis and number crunching. A fun fact is that if you complete your Core 2 and then did performance management, there's not many new topics you need to learn. So most of it is just going to be an extension of what you learned in Core 2. So as a tip, I'd recommend people taking performance management right after Core 2 so they have the basic concepts fresh in their mind. Again, you could see some of the topics that are tested in performance management, and if any of those interest you or you feel comfortable in doing any of those, then you might consider doing performance management as your elective or depth area. Now for finance, another one of those least loved topics. Every time we ask about depth areas in Capstone 2, this is one of the least selected topics along with tax. If you're into number crunching and using Excel, then this might be for you. Or if you're planning to get your Chartered Financial Analyst designation after your CPA, this could also help you prepare for that as well. For people who like numbers, they'll find this really easy. For those who don't, they'll find it really hard. So take a read of the topics listed below and see if this is something that you like to do or you find easy. The final tip I want to leave with you is that up until the middle of your Capstone 2, you could always change your depth area, but it's not recommended because you would have wasted some time studying a depth area that you're not going to get tested on. So make sure you make up your decision before you start your Capstone 2. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you found this video helpful and now you know a little bit more about the 4 different electives. If you like what you saw, please consider to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below.